Next question. What do you, in all honesty, think of the gaming community nowadays versus how it was back then when we were kids? When I was a kid, I was born the last day of 1987. So there's even a generation before me of gamers that would scoff at me and my experiences just because I was a baby when all this Nintendo hype was going on, the NES at least. And so, when I was a kid, I'm going to assume kid is 5 or between 5 and 10, 5 and 12 years old. Which means, it was 93 to 90, we'll go 93 to 2000 or so. In that stretch, you had the Super Nintendo, you had the Game Boy, the N64, the PlayStation. I'd say that, number one, it was hard to actually see evidence of a community back then. There wasn't like a YouTube community, or there wasn't like a Facebook or anything like that. Your community was basically Nintendo Power. And you get the Nintendo Power and you flip through and you see who's in it. And this guy was showing off this high score, or this guy was submitting this drawing. That was your gaming community. Or you'd have a group of close friends, no more than 10 or 12 probably, that you would play with and discuss games with. I think this is a double-edged sword of a good thing, bad thing, because now that we have forums, and now that we have YouTube and Facebook and Twitter, we're able to see a lot more opinions, and a lot more different opinions at that we can choose if we want to think about and kind of change our own opinions on. So essentially what I'm getting at is, back in the day it was a lot simpler, but also you didn't get, maybe you didn't hear about certain games because your group was only tuned into one genre or two genres. Maybe you didn't hear about RPGs because you were only tuned into sports games and racing games, or something like that. These days, you can hear about pretty much anything and everything. I use Twitter as a newspaper. When I wake up in the morning, I scroll Twitter to see what the gaming stories are. You didn't get that back then. And you didn't get to immediately talk about all the stories that broke unless it was at school. In which case, there was very limited amount of talking going on. It was either, I don't know about you guys, but for me, the time to talk was at recess or lunch, and that would be when we'd play football or something like that. So you didn't get a whole lot of time to talk, especially not in class, because the teachers would, yell at you or whatever. But again, I'd say back in the day, it was a much simpler time, and I'd say we'd gotten less serious arguments about video games, where the trade-off is we get more arguments, on YouTube and in forums, Facebook, whatever, but also you're hearing a greater scope of opinion and a greater scope of what people are playing, which is, I think, is pretty valuable.